So what do you think, Mr. Bones? Should I just get right to the point? Yeah, that's what I thought. So, the new Goosebumps show just completely dropped the ball. Any goodwill that it had built up, it just threw right in the dumpster. I wasn't planning on doing a follow-up to this show. Maybe ever, definitely not until after the first season had finished airing. But after watching the penultimate episode of Season 1, I absolutely could not stay silent on this. I gave this show a pretty good review. I recommended it to people. I now take that back. Like, I'm sounding a little more outraged than I actually am because, that brings the viewers. But, God, this show just pissed on everything. It just took all the good that it did, and it just pissed all over all of it. Episode 8, the first episode to air after I made that review, was fine. I watched it. I thought it was perfectly fine. It was basically what I expected it to be, though. They managed to talk down the ghost of, what's his name, Biddle. I can't remember his first name. Harold? Was it Harold? I don't remember. And basically concluded the storyline up to that point, which made sense. Biddle was a kid who felt dejected. He didn't have anything in common with his parents. He felt like an outsider at school, and then this supernatural being, Slappy the Dummy, swoops in and starts manipulating him. So it made sense that he made a lot of mistakes and then doubled down on them because he was a teenager. But then faced with the reality of what he did and the fact that people still believed in him, they still saw good in him, that could turn him back around. I can totally buy that. And so the ghost of Harold Biddle is redeemed and helps them to defeat Slappy. And I kind of expected something like that to happen because the story was gearing up towards some kind of conclusion at episode 8 out of 10. So I expected that there would be a false end, and then we would get kind of a couple episodes of epilogue where there would be like some twists and turns, and then the real ending where everybody comes together. Because we never really got, like we kind of did in episode 8, but we never really got a true coming together moment of all of the characters, all of the main characters in this show. And at the end of episode 8, there's the implication that somebody finds Slappy, and we don't know who that is. And also, there's the mystery of how, what was his name? Justin Long's character, the teacher. I'll just call him Justin Long because he's Justin Long. You know what I mean. There's the mystery of how he ended up here, when he ended up here, for all this to happen. I thought the show was implying that he inherited this house. Not that it wasn't his to inherit, but that he inherited it now because there was some force working in the background. The whole situation just seemed kind of suspect, and that's a pretty common thing in terms of horror tropes. Can you tell that I'm making this video very off the cuff? That's a common thing in terms of horror tropes, that like you are given the haunted house at just the right time for the haunting to affect you the most. You know what I mean? So I assumed that we were going to find out that there was some shadowy background organization that, maybe not even organization, just like a group of people or something, that was trying to orchestrate all of these supernatural things happening at the same time so that they could resurrect Slappy, and that's who found him at the end. That they weren't, the concern wasn't all season that Slappy would manipulate Biddle into, like, I don't know, taking over the town or whatever his end game was at that point. We didn't really know at that point. It was that some group knew that Biddle would be able to put things in motion to get Slappy back, and then they could take Slappy from him because they wanted Slappy for some reason. Like a cult maybe, or something. Maybe even something related back to the guy from the Slappy flashback. The ventriloquist, right? And so I was excited. I was excited to see, just as the characters thought everything was winding down, something happened that would bring them all together again, and we would get to see the combined dynamic of this group, or at the very least the combined dynamic of the teenage characters and Justin Long's character, because they were that was still the most fun part of the season, was seeing them actually work together and interact. I was also looking forward to finding out more about Justin Long's character, because we hadn't really actually spent much time with him. Regret that now, for sure, because that's what they did. They absolutely ruined his character. And I'm sure you're asking, AJ, how did they do that? If we didn't really know the character that well, how could they possibly ruin him? Well, hypothetical viewer. They did that by giving us a flashback that told us his history, even though it is not at all in line with the kind of person we met in those early episodes when he was still himself, or the person that we met when he interacted directly with the kids inside that scrapbook. It takes that person who was portrayed as a calm, wise, maybe over his head a little bit, even in everyday situations, but still calm and wise and reasonable educator type who gets on well with kids and has his life together. He did not come off as someone who doesn't have his life together at all. Like, there was no inkling at all that he didn't have things in order, right? They took that person, they just crapped all over them with this portrayal of a down on his luck aspiring author who only does the education stuff to make ends meet, and is on the cusp of losing his job and then does, and is on the cusp of losing his house and then does, only to inherit this house at the very last second when he needs it most, after being so irresponsible that he gets his dog killed. And so he moves into town out of desperation, not to seek new opportunities as had been implied up to that point, but out of desperation, even though he did not come off at all like a desperate person up to this point. And so now he is so desperate that after he writes the story of this season in a book and tries to sell it to a publisher, and the publisher wants a twist ending, he goes and resurrects Slappy himself and gets someone killed so that he can write down what Slappy does as the ending of his book, because he can't think of a twist ending on his own. They took this character and they completely rewrote everything that he had been up to this point and twisted it specifically to give us this twist where he is now the villain. And first of all, like, I get what they're doing here. His publisher calling him saying, well, we need a twist to turn this into a franchise. I get the commentary there, that they're saying that people care more about twists than they do about good storytelling. But that doesn't mean it's a good idea to write that into your stinking show. Like, fight against it then. If that's the commentary you're making, then prove those people wrong by doing something else and having it work. But then on top of that, this is just a bad idea because Justin Long's character was a victim. He was possessed by the villain of this, one of the villains of this season. He was a victim. And do people really like to see, even in fiction, victimizers or victims become victimizers? Like, maybe if that's the kind of story that's being told, if that's specifically what the story is about. But that's not what this is. This is a kitschy, goofy, kid Stephen King show. That's not what it's supposed to be about. And yet they take a victim and turn him into a victimizer. And the only excuse for why he would behave this way, why he would make this stupid, obvious mistake, even as desperate as he is, because he has been shown to be a wise and reasonable person up to this point, is if he didn't know everything that Slappy had been up to this point. But he wrote an entire book about the entire story of this season up to this point, so he has to know the details of how bad Slappy is and how dangerous he is. And yet, at the end of episode 9, he uses the spell that the ventriloquist refused to use, that would have given Slappy whatever ability to do whatever it is he plans to do. And he resurrects Slappy in a human body where now Slappy can cast magic himself. And he seems shocked. He seems shocked that everything has gone bad, that he isn't in control of this situation. And that's just not the person. That's not the selfless, helpful, and still kind of doofy and goofy because he's played by Justin Long person, but still an entirely reasonable and good-natured person that we had seen up to this point. Like, they had to have done table reads for this show, right? Where they got the actors sitting together before they actually started filming and saw the kind of chemistry they had with each other, right? Like, that's the thing, right? Because, legitimately, the best part of this season so far was when the kids were interacting with Justin. They had to have known that. So why would you do that? Why would you pit them against each other? And I remind you, immediately, like, it's not like they can just, backtrack on this. Like, he can come back from this in the end and like be an ally to the other characters again, because he gets somebody killed. One of the parents, Ben, gets transformed into a wooden dummy by one of Slappy's spells immediately after Slappy is resurrected. And we know from Biddle's parents that kills you. So Ben's just dead now. Like, as far as I'm concerned, this character is irredeemable. For no reason except that they wanted a twist in an episode that seems to be saying that having a twist for the sake of having a twist is bad. And I get that sometimes Goosebumps did that. It put a little twist at the end of a book just to have one there. But they always felt, I don't know, goofier, less serious, even than the rest of the story that they were in. As if that was Stein saying, I had to put a twist in there because it's a horror book. Ha, let's laugh about it together. It never felt like a serious part of any narrative, right? And yet this is a serious turn in the narrative. And I hate it. I hate it with every fiber of my being. I do want to thank the writers on this show. There's a lot going on in the world right now and in my life, specifically too, as well. And this has at least distracted me from all of that a little bit, which is, nice. But God, I have lost any desire to watch any more of this show. I'm still going to. I'm going to watch the final episode because I'm a glutton for punishment. But I don't want to. And I certainly will never go back and revisit this show. Like, this killed my enthusiasm for this show 100% all at once, as if I had slammed right into a steel wall. It's absolutely amazing. Like, you hear the term jumping the shark, but, like, even that is, like, jumping the shark is the term for the moment that you look back on in retrospect and realize that's the moment when the show went so far and tried so hard that it lost everything that made it magical, and then from then on it was just kind of a decline. But you don't realize that. You don't notice it at first. It feels like maybe even a high point for the show. But then you realize later that that's actually what killed it. This is like you tried to jump the shark, but you hit a brick wall and exploded. The show's just dead now. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. They killed their own show. They chopped its head off, and then they propped it up and puppeted it forward like some gross, macabre Weekend at Bernie's bullcrap. Not only that, but all of the angst between the kids. Like, it didn't feel particularly egregious up to this point. But whoever wrote this episode, they just found every way to make every interaction between these kid characters, except for like James and Isabella, so god dang annoying. Like, I just hated them in this episode. And, like, at worst, I kind of rolled my eyes at them from time to time in the previous ones. At least the adults were still written pretty well in this one, I guess. It's the best I could say about it, frankly. I've been ranting about this for way longer than I intended to. I intended this to just be a really short thing. So, I'm going to stop here before I just go off on more tangents. What did you guys think of the big twist in episode 9 of Goosebumps, if you've seen it? God, I hope you didn't. I really hope you didn't. I would feel bad for you if you did. But in case you did, or just, if you just want to give your thoughts on what I've said about it, let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well check out the comment section where there's links to all my various social medias, as well as the link where you can pick up the first 3 novels in my book series, which do not have arbitrary twists just to have twists. If there's a twist in there, it's for a good reason. And like, I don't like to say my stuff's better than other people's stuff, but I think they're better than this. So, like, if you're thinking about watching this show, go read one of my books instead. God, that's a cynical thing to say. Before this drives me insane, I'll talk to you guys later.